Well, hey, everybody, welcome to Our Watch with Tim Thompson. We've got a very special episode for you today. Been talking a lot for years about what's going on in the public school systems, and a lot of people have been telling me, you know, we hear what you're saying, Tim, but do you have any evidence? Do you have anybody that will come forward and actually talk about this, that was there, that was part of it? And the answer is yes, we do. We have a very special guest with us today. This is a man named Kevin Druhe. Kevin, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, talk a little bit, if you would, just about your credentials. You're a former administrator and former teacher for the Temecula Valley Unified School District, correct?
Correct. I wore a lot of hats. I worked there for 20 years, and I started teaching in algebra and biology. And then from there, I went to a continuation school. This is all within the Temecula Valley Unified School District. So there for 20 years, teaching, as I said, algebra and biology. I also was a counselor at a program called Excelsior, and I was really like the teacher, counselor, and even administrator for that program. Did that for 3 years, and then at Temecula Valley High School, I was asked to be what's called a TOSA, teacher in special assignment, doing administration, where I was the dean, and I would oversee behavior for all 3,000 students at Temecula Valley High School, which really opened my eyes to, you know, all the behavior situations that are going on at almost any high school, but especially Temecula Valley High School, which I think might be surprising to a lot of families. I know it was surprising to me, even as a teacher who had been there for many years. But then, you know, as a teacher, you're in a classroom. You're not seeing every behavior issue that is happening on campus. But as the dean and working with administration, I was able to. Quickly after that, I realized that that's not the direction I want to go with my career. Not to mention, I pastor as well as you do, and went to finish my last handful of years just doing health and PE, still at Temecula Valley High School. But yeah, it got to a point where I think that it's very difficult for a Christian to continue working at a public high school with the direction that it's gone, with the expectations and what the schools are allowing to do. I think it's very hard to stand up for what we believe in and still keep your job. I think a lot of people are not staying up for what, when I say people, I mean Christian teachers, because it's going to come at a sacrifice to stand up for what we believe in.
Right. Yeah, for sure. We're living in a time where to be a Christian and to truly stand for what is true and good and right is going to be increasingly more difficult to do.
It is.
But you're a person who knows what's going on. You were employed by the school district. Yeah. You were a teacher. You were a principal or vice principal.
Assistant principal. Well, it's under like a TOSA assignment, but you're overseeing administration. You're in the admin office, and you're in assistant principal room.
And you handle discipline for children.
Right.
4 different grade levels. Approximately how many students was that?
3,000.
Okay, so 3,000 students. So when it comes to what's happening, the issues that are happening in the public school system, right here in the valley that I live in, the valley I pastor in, you're saying that you are a credible source of somebody who knows what's happening with the kids on campus and how the school is responding to these things.
True. I know exactly what's going on.
Okay.
I know exactly the truth behind the veil, if you will, behind what's truly going on.
Right.
So everything.
You no longer work for the school district, though.
I just ended my 20 years there, so I'm going to be focusing just exclusively on ministry and church and whatever the Lord has for me. And it's not like entirely my plan was to leave when I left. I would have loved to see the school and the district make a change, but again, it got to the point where I can't continue allowing and being part of a direction that's unbiblical, and it's very difficult, you know, as a teacher, especially a Christian teacher.
You know, and you say unbiblical, and I agree with you. We want biblical, but let's look at it just from a perspective of many people in our community that may not be Christian, may not really care what's biblical, but just what's good and right, you know, on a logical standpoint. There are certain things that should be logical. You shouldn't, you know, it should be something that you shouldn't have to go, well, this is biblical. This is just something that everybody should generally accept. So as a PE teacher, you know, we look at the transgender ideology, how this is encroaching into the public school systems. You have seen what's going on. You've had experiences that man, I would be trying to scrub my eyes after these experiences. Talk to me a little bit about what's going on with the transgender ideology and how that's creeping into the public school system, Temecula Valley High School in particular.
Yes, that's interesting because I didn't start right in PE. It's almost like God allowed me to kind of end my season doing PE and that kind of stuff. Because as I said, I started with algebra and biology. But the last handful of years, being in PE at Temecula Valley High School specifically, we see the increase in the allowance of students who identify according to their self-identity for their gender. They can use whatever locker room and restroom they want. I have seen with my own eyes, sadly, women. I want to say women. I mean female students. I guess they're not yet women, but they're maturing and they're going into the men's locker room and they're changing and they're taking off their shirt and their bra. And they're walking out with their breasts exposed. It's ludicrous. It is absolutely asinine. You wouldn't believe it unless you were there to see it. And it's one thing, as I shared earlier, when you have a female student who identifies as a male, but they also dress like a male. So they wear jeans and maybe a hoodie and a hat, and they have more of a boyish look to them. It's not as startling when they walk into the boys' locker room. You almost couldn't even tell until they start changing. But that's one issue. But the other issue is when you have examples that I saw where a student who's a female student, but she also wears skirts and has long hair, and she looks like a female, but yet identifies as a male, and then she will walk into the locker room with her long hair and her skirts and whatever female attire she has, and then she begins to change. And we're supposed to just allow this. we just sit back and watch. It's a circus, is what it is. And because there are females now in boys' locker rooms and boys' bathrooms, because of course females still have their menstrual cycle, that they're still now provided tampons and pads in the boys' locker room and in the boys' bathrooms. And then those are looked at as just things for the other guys just to throw around and just to make a mess. I mean, it's just a complete chaos in the locker room, in the bathrooms. Guys going in the girls' bathrooms and vice versa. It's quite a show.
So this is clearly it's happening in Temecula Valley High School. This is commonplace. It's not like it's something that. It's a one-off situation. This is something that's very common, and it takes place on a regular basis.
It happens every period.
Okay.
Yeah, this is not just once a semester or once a month or once a week. This is every period, every single period, 6 periods a day. There are guys and girls going into the locker rooms and bathrooms that they self-identify with and changing and exposing themselves and walking around. And you will have boys in there taking showers, and you have girls walking around naked. And this is in the locker rooms on the boys' side.
Wow!
Because I saw it.
Yeah. Now, I would hope that there are a lot of educators like yourself that would be opposed to this happening.
Right.
That I would like to believe that in the Temecula Valley Unified School District that the vast majority of the teachers would say this is just not okay.
Right.
Is that the case?
I wish that was the case. I don't feel that is the case. I feel that in a percentage, looking at that, the majority of teachers are just kind of shrug their shoulders, just saying it is what it is. I think that there's another percentage, obviously, that are applauding it and thinking that's a good thing, that the students are able to express themselves and be who they are. And I think the smallest percentage would be a more of a conservative mindset where this is wrong and we should not be allowing girls to walk around nude or topless at least in the locker room. Although even out on the halls, there's no dress code. I know there's no dress code at Temecula Valley High School. And as I shared before, you can have students walking around the halls with a bikini top as their attire, and their shorts are so short that their butt is hanging out of the back. So this is not like we're seeing this inappropriate attire, just or lack of even of attire in the locker room. We're all seeing it, but there's a very small percentage, I think, that are very frustrated by it and willing to say anything. Yeah. I think mostly we just kind of shrug our shoulders and say it is what it is, which is what I don't like, and typically what I don't do.
So right now, currently, it is state law. You know, teachers have to affirm these things with the kids that identify this way. They have to even hide it from parents.
Yeah.
That is the state law. So the public school system, I call it the government-ran school system, is a place where the parents are being kept in the dark, where secrets are being kept. And I say this very consistently. We teach our kids at a very young age that if any adult ever tells you, let's keep this secret between us, don't tell your parents, that adult has nefarious ideas towards you. That adult has something wrong that they want to accomplish in your life. So never, ever keep a secret from mom and dad. But here we are in a government-ran school. They're creating this environment that's very secretive.
They are.
But they're also creating an environment where conservative teachers, and there are good conservative teachers that I know many of them, good conservative teachers are not allowed to say anything. Not only that, but when asked their own personal opinion, then they end up in trouble. You had experience with that, where you were asked, "What do you think?" And you shared what you thought, and you ended up getting in trouble. Can you talk about that at all?
Yeah, that was a couple years back, not many, maybe 3 to 5 years ago, and we had 2 students in my class, one boy and one girl. I think they were juniors. And they came up to me. They said, "Hey, Druhe, we're going to run for homecoming king and queen. What do you think?" I said, "I think that's great. I hope you guys get it." And they said, however, the guy said, "I'm going to run for the queen position." And the girl said, "I'm going to run for the homecoming king. What do you think about that?" And I said, "Well, I would not agree with that. I think that you should run for the guy and the girl should run for the girl." And they got very upset, extremely upset, actually. And the boy in particular started yelling and cussing at me, getting in my face. And then he stormed off to the office where it was reported that he made quite a scene in the administration office, was yelling and cussing, and caused quite a stir. I was reprimanded for that one. I was.
So you were brought in, you were reprimanded for simply voicing your opinion that a boy should run for the king, a girl should run for the...
That I should have thought about his concerns and been, aware that he wanted to run for the girl position and that she wanted to run for the guy, and that me voicing my beliefs and my opinions caused them to be uncomfortable and upset and angry. And from the administration's perspective, rightfully so, and that the chaos that ensued in the administration office was basically something that I had instigated. And I need to be more careful, I was told, in how I respond to students who have those desires or leanings. Which I disagreed.
So there's obviously behavioral problems with kids, and it's the teacher's fault for voicing their opinion. So teachers aren't allowed to have an opinion at this point, unless
it matches.
Unless it lines up with this liberal agenda.
And that's not the only. I've been called in the office as well. This is going back a little further. I was told that I can no longer bring my Bible with me to work, and I was told that it's making kids uncomfortable. And that they can't learn in my classroom because they see me come to school with a Bible. And I have a little pocket Bible that I carry with me, and then I'll put it on my desk, and I'll read it during lunch and whatnot. So I was pulled in the administration office and told that I should no longer bring my Bible with me to work. And they said that I'm making students uncomfortable and that I'm not preparing them for the world. And I disagree. I actually said the opposite. I said, well, I think that we are preparing them for the real world, because in this situation, they're going to have to learn that even after high school, they might very well work with a Christian. And that Christian, he or she very well might bring a Bible. And I think we're better preparing them, actually, for the real world by not having me pretend I'm someone I'm not, and I'll just continue carrying my Bible with me. And I know I was teaching algebra at the time, and I know the other algebra teacher, female teacher, she brought her Bible with her, but she put it in her purse, so you couldn't see it. And I said, well, I shouldn't have to think about putting it in the backpack or a purse, like as if it's some contraband.
Right.
Right? I mean, I'm carrying a Bible, and yet I'm being pulled in the office. It's Temecula Valley, and I'm asked if what I think about kids running for a king and queen, and I give my thought, and I'm being reprimanded.
Right.
It's ludicrous.
It's creating an environment where the only teachers that are going to excel are teachers that fall in line lockstep with this liberal agenda.
Of course.
There's behavioral problems on campus, 3,000 students.
Yeah.
But what we hear when we hear about Temecula Valley High School, we think, you got to go there. You got to send your kids there. Yeah. They got such a low suspension rate. They got such high standards. It's such a great school. Send your kids there. If you want to be a conservative family, move to Temecula, put your kids in Temecula High School. Right. And the numbers would show that that's true.
True. The numbers would.
But the reality is something far different. Can you speak to that reality?
Yeah, the numbers belie the truth of what's going on. The numbers do look good, and they're made to look good deliberately. And of course, families who are looking at numbers would be deceived because the numbers of academics are high and the numbers of suspensions are low. And that is true. However, there's a reason for that. The reasons are not genuine. The reasons we have low suspension rates is because we don't suspend. I was the one overseeing all suspensions for when I was the dean for the Temecula Valley High School. And there is a type of rubric of sorts where if a student were to get in a fight, that's a mandatory 1 to 3 day suspension. If they get in a second fight, it's a mandatory 3 to 5 day suspension, depending on other variables, even with the possibility with the recommendation for expulsion. We do not follow those guidelines at all. I remember many times where I would have students in my office. I would do my due diligence. I would do my research. I'd talk to the teachers. I'd talk to the witnesses of a fight or drug possession or sex on campus. Sex on campus is very common.
I want to talk about
that. There's very common at Temecula Valley High School. Drugs on campus, alcohol on campus. People are high. People are drunk. People are having sex on campus during the school day. And I would come to my conclusion. I look at the California rubric and say, I think this is going to be a 3 day suspension. I go to get it signed off by the principal, and they say, yeah, let's back off the 3 day. Well, they're already in your office today, so that kind of counts as a day. So that's a 1 day. And, if we did an in-school suspension, or if they were to sit in front of your office and bring work, that's kind of another. So let's write this down as a 1 day suspension, but we'll treat it more as a 3 day. It's just deception. It's not as if these schools, such as the school that I worked at for 20 years, has good behavior. That's not the case. All that's happening is that the students are not being held accountable for their behavior. I have seen students fight, be punched in the face. I was probably 40 feet away from 2 students who broke out into a fight, and one got punched in the face. I took them both to the office. I wrote up what I saw as a witness. I said this was the aggressor. This is the victim. He was punched in the face. I wrote it up, and then I spent my entire lunch explaining it and doing my paperwork process, and I go back to my classroom, and an hour later, I see them walk in the halls. How? A kid just punched another kid in the face. And he is walking the campus an hour later. Why is he not home?
Right.
It's absolutely ridiculous. So what happens is a lot of times, teachers like myself, we get reluctant to write things up because we know we're not going to be supported. We know that it's going to be a big waste of time for me. I got to call the parents. I got to write this up. I got to take them to the office. And I know when it comes down to it, they're not going to be held accountable for their behavior. So there's a complete lethargy of teachers to hold students accountable for their behavior. Now, when students can have sex, get in fights, and do these things during class, and there's literally a slap on the wrist, and you can talk to the campus security as well, how fed up they are with, because these are the ones who patrol the campus and write things and see things. And they see as well the frustration because nothing's getting done, nothing's being held accountable. So when you look at sex on campus, drugs on campus, alcohol on campus, fights on campus, people being kicked in the face, which is a crime, by the way. So, you learn a lot when you're an assistant principal and overseeing behavior. If you fight, that's one thing. But if someone's on the ground, you kick them in the face on the ground, it's actually a crime. So we have the police on campus as well, and I got to work with them. So there are crimes that are being committed on campus, but yet nothing's being held accountable. Now, when that isn't held accountable, when you have lower level things, right? Shirts that have profanity on them, shirts that have nudity on them, students walking around with their butt exposed, students walking around with a bikini top as their attire for the day. Nothing's gonna happen is the mindset of the Christian. Mm-hmm. If I write up someone for drinking, smoking, fighting, sex, and almost nothing happens, if not literally nothing happens, what is going on? What is going on? This is what we call education nowadays. This is what we call a learning environment. This is a learning environment. Which is what education.
What are they learning?
They're learning how to be socialized according to the progressive mindset, and they're becoming numb to alcohol and drugs and profanity and fighting. Kids are becoming used to being bullies. I had another student, two students in my class who got in a fight, and I wrote it up, sent them to the office, and I called during lunch to ask what the final determination was, because I'm curious and frustrated that nothing would happen. And of course, nothing happened. I said, well, why did nothing happen this time? They said, well, we determined upon our investigation that these kids were just horsing around. Really, horsing around. A kid who had the basketball thrown at them repeatedly and pushed to the ground and mocked and made fun of were horsing around. And the admin said, well, according to our investigation, they're friends. And because their friends are horsing around. No, that's not true. You have a bully and you have a victim. And the victim is scared to say that they're not friends. So if he were to say they're not friends, he's going to be picked on more. And I challenged the administration. I said, if they're really so-called friends, I challenge you to go find them during lunch and find if they hang out together. Watch if they eat together. Watch if they hang out. Watch if they run together, because they don't. But you have a bully who is beating up on a victim who's smaller and younger, and you are allowing this. They're not friends. And you know they're not friends, but that's what they told you. And that's what you're going to believe because you don't want to suspend. Because heavens forbid, we hold people accountable. The truth might be out.
Right. And numbers go up. Right. You talk about sex on campus.
Yeah.
And I think this is very alarming. I've been reporting on this a long time.
Yeah.
And it's hard because a lot of teachers don't want to comment on the reality of this.
Right.
But I know that it's even happening down at the elementary school level.
Yeah.
School dances where people are having sex on the dance floor.
Yeah.
During the dance.
Yeah.
And parents are like, well, it's they're just out at the whatever the ball or whatever they're going to, whatever dance it is.
Yeah.
It's just fun, like when I was a kid. Well, it's not like when we were kids.
Not at all.
Things have changed. Sex is happening on campus, and this is something parents need to be very, very well aware of. And there's even environments. There's places now to go do this.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Yes. There are several places that are common that have sex on campus, at least at Temecula Valley High School. I can speak of that because I worked there and I saw this with my own eyes and had them in my office, and they had to call their parents and tell them that their child was having sex on campus. A very uncomfortable phone call. I usually would have the student explain what was happening, and then I would be there to fill in any details if the child had left out any details. When Temecula Valley allowed students to go to their cars during lunch, which they no longer do, thankfully, that was a place that was common for sexual activities to occur in their cars, in their vehicles. In addition, there are places on campus where there's outside, I kid you not, outside corridors where people are having sex outside. And obviously the campus supervisors in the golf carts try and frequently go there to make sure no one's having sex, but it occurs. So the students get a little more creative. This was the most creative one that I came across, but it got caught. There was a student who was a teacher's assistant for the drama class. Now, in the drama class, you have the theater and you have a changing room. And the changing room is a rather large room, a little bigger than a normal bedroom, and it's locked because they have the drama clothing and attire in there when they do their performances, so they keep it locked. But the TA for the drama class had the key for the changing room. She was, turns out, allowing boyfriends and girlfriends, if they were even that, maybe not, but boys and girls nonetheless, to meet her there during class when the drama class wasn't happening, because drama didn't happen every class. So there were some periods where the drama room was empty, and henceforth the changing room was empty. So this TA would allow a guy and a girl to meet her during this period, and she would unlock the changing room, and she would allow the guy and the girl to go in there, and then she'd lock it behind them, and they'd have sex. And this was going on for weeks, if not months. And we finally caught on to it, and we disciplined them, although I believe a very, very light discipline. The dad of the student that was the TA was very mad at us, saying that his child didn't do anything wrong, because his child just opened the door. How can that child be responsible for what goes into the right? I mean, everyone wants to pass the buck, but this went on for a while, and so that was a little more covert, but it's happening, and but you're having students dress provocatively. You have students dress where their breasts are literally hanging out, their butt is literally hanging out, and then you're surprised. And then you're surprised now with their sexual immorality on campus.
Right.
You're going to allow them to dress like this. You're going to allow the guys to wear nudity, have shirts with naked women on there. You're going to allow the female students to dress almost naked themselves. And then you're going to be surprised when there's sex on campus. I mean,
right.
I'm not surprised.
Right. I mean, but hearing something like this where there's somebody facilitating a room for
like a brothel.
Like a brothel. Right. Like, I mean, this is like, okay, now what, like, is there a schedule? Do you have like,
there was.
There was?
There was. Yeah,
oh my gosh.
There was a paper. There was. Actually, it was a full-on paper, time and dates where people would meet. Yeah, it was a full-on program, a brothel that they had set up. Yes, it was bad.
Unbelievable. Parents need to know this.
They'd never advertise it unless you have someone like myself or others who are going to say it. It's just they're going to keep it under wraps.
Right. Talk to us, if you would, about the drug issue on campus. I mean, kids on drugs, bringing drugs to school.
Right.
How prevalent is that in the Temecula High School?
It is an everyday occurrence. I saw when I was overseeing behavior, water bottles filled with vodka. That was common. It's hard to catch because they look like water until you start to see behavior change or smell something on their lips or their breath. So that one's pretty covert. That one was difficult, but we slowly catch on. We have the drug dogs come on campus at least every other month, and of course the dogs would walk around locker rooms and classrooms, and then it would sit next to a backpack or a locker room when it smelled a contraband. However, I remember specifically being in the admin office with the police and the drug dog, and I said, we need to go in this classroom. We can't go in that classroom. Well, why not? Well, it's going to look like we're targeting a student, but all indications tell us that's the drug dealer. So let's go in that classroom now, because most likely that's where the drugs are now. And a lot of times admin would be afraid. And they would pick a class to go in where they know there's not going to be much drug use. And I'd say, why don't we go to the locker rooms? Why don't we go to the students we have record of these students who have been suspended for drug use and selling drugs on campus, and they're back on campus right now. Let's go to their classroom and let's have the dog go in that classroom. Well, we can't do that. Why not? That's the most logical sense to me. Well, we don't want it to seem like, again, we're going to target an individual. I don't understand the logic. We know students who are selling drugs. We know the students who are most likely having drugs on them right now. Let's go to them right now. Well, we don't want to do that.
Right. So I mean, you think about it. I mean, that is a thing called accountability. We've already caught you once. We're going to hold you accountable. You've already said that if we welcome you back on campus, you're not going to exhibit this kind of behavior anymore.
Yeah.
So let's help hold you accountable. You never know. That might have been the accountability that student needed.
Oh, guaranteed.
They need it. And
they did.
There's something about humanity, like we reject accountability, but when we look at it from a biblical and pragmatic standpoint, it really is something so necessary in our lives. Being held accountable to do what you say you're going to do, and letting our yes be yes and our no no. I think that the administration is robbing those students of that accountability that they so desperately need in their life.
They are, and that's where we know good parenting hold kids accountable. And if these kids think that they can smoke pot, do drugs on school campus, and get a warning, or get a one-day in-school suspension, or a one-day school suspension, and they're going to be back. I mean, not only when I was working as the dean and overseeing the behavior, but also as a teacher. When a student gets suspended, all the teachers are notified. Obviously, you need to know that your student's not going to be there the next day, and it'll tell you how many days they're suspended and for what cause. There's a code, but then you just match the code up, and typically the code will tell you what was fighting or drug use. I mean, it's just unbelievable. How many times can a kid be suspended in a semester for drug use? Right. How many times? How many times are you going to give someone a one-day suspension for bringing pot to school, or drugs to school, or selling drugs on campus, or fighting? How many times are we going to allow this? in one semester. And you could look it up. I don't know how we will get it now because student confidentiality and schools and whatnot, but I can tell you how many times I saw a student over and over and over, 1 day suspension, 1 day suspension, 1 day suspension, over and over, and almost like a weekly thing for bringing drugs to school or drugs on campus before anything happens. So the drug use is a daily thing. I would say the sex is probably a weekly thing. The drugs are a daily thing. I guarantee every single day someone is high and doing drugs on campus. With the vaping, going to the bathrooms with the vaping, which you can have nicotine or marijuana in there, and the vodka, and it's just such a cap between the sex and the drugs and the fighting and this kind of stuff. And this is at Temecula Valley High School, which most people would perceive as a good school.
Right.
It's amazing what's really going on.
Yeah. When you look at that type of environment and you think about the conservative teachers that are there are some conservative teachers.
There's a few.
Yeah. So when you look at those conservative teachers, what kind of environment has that created for them?
Well, I think there's really only a handful of ways you can respond, right? Not even a handful, like one or two. You can either stand up against it and become, maybe in the administration's eyes, a difficult teacher, cantankerous teacher, or a problem teacher, or you shrug your shoulders and just say, this is what it is. Or you can go to the union. I don't know how much help that would be, though, to go to a liberal union as a conservative teacher. Talk
to me about the unions. So we look at what's happening right now. I want to talk to you about school boards as well. But before we get into school boards, the unions are an issue right now. We look at the California Teachers Association. It's the most corrupt union in our state. We look at the local unions, the local associations that are attached to the CTA. What is their agenda for our campus? What kind of environment are these union members creating on campus?
It's a very progressive agenda is what it is. And I would encourage every teacher, at the very least, to not be part of the union, because you can opt out. It is possible to opt out. Or if a teacher doesn't feel comfortable opting out of the union, you can contact the union and state specifically that you don't want your union dues to go to anything political. Because the union is political, and they're very liberal, and they're advocating for the progressive agenda. They're advocating for transgender. They're advocating for racism, I believe, because when we say these things, like even Black Lives Matter and things like that nature, as Christians, we truly believe, at least, and I think any decent person would, that all lives matter. But when you're asked to fly a flyer in your classroom window, which we were 2 years ago, saying that this place is safe specifically for LGBT, why are we singling out one person? Isn't my classroom safe for everybody? So I would say the union's agenda is a very political one that's progressive. And I think any union dues that are going towards that would be against a conservative mindset. So you can opt out. And I think the Christian or conservative or both should opt out, because they're politicizing, and they're bringing that political mindset to the classroom.
So you talked about the racism. Critical race theory is a big topic right now. We look, and a lot of people say, well, it's not being taught in Temecula High School, Temecula Valley Unified School District in general. We don't teach critical race theory. Now, I would say this. I would agree that it's not necessarily in the curriculums. And this is the issue that I keep running into, is they go, well, it's not in our curriculum. Come look at our curriculum. Okay, it's not in the curriculum, maybe. I haven't gone through all of the curriculums, but I have searched through several, and I would say I agree. It's not in the curriculum. But what I do know is that there are teachers teaching it regardless. So can you talk about critical race theory? Is that something that's being implemented? Is that something teachers are pushing on the students at Temecula Valley High School?
Well, I think I'd be out of bounds to speak specifically as far as the classroom's concerned, because I taught math, algebra, biology, counselor, PE, and health. So none of those critical race theories would be part of the textbook or curriculum that I had taught. So I couldn't say, and I wouldn't want to outstep the truth. I like to walk in the truth and speak the truth. So I couldn't say if it's being taught from the textbook. However, I could say that the undercurrent of the critical race theory is being pushed, is being encouraged. That there's this mindset, right, that the white ethnicity, that we're the reason that causes racism, and that we're to be looked down upon in that sense, and that we're causing this institutionalized racism that occurs. That it's the origin of the problem comes from the white male, which is racism. I don't understand that racism is racism, no matter how you slice it. My understanding of it. I remember one of the teachers. She had a I think it was a BLM sticker on her Temecula Valley Unified School District laptop issued. And she was talking about hypocrisy and racism. And I chuckled a little bit. And she turned to me, "Why'd you laugh?" I said, "Well, you're talking about how you hate racism and hypocrisy, and yet you're advocating one race above another by saying this one particular race matters." And oh my gosh, you'd think I had set off a firestorm in there. The other teachers got up and told me that I was being racist. And I said, wait, because I said all lives matter? A simple comment. This is how this is the tension of race that is in the Temecula Valley Unified School Districts. This strong undercurrent of tension to the point where I genuinely believe all lives matter. And when I said that one teacher had to get up. He was so shaken. He was upset and left the conversation. And the other teacher called me a bigot of some sort and walked out. All because I had shared an opinion amongst adults that I believe all lives are equal and all lives matter. And when you have these teachers with this mindset pushing that on students, you might be able to say as a district that they're not pushing critical race theory, but when you're walking around with stickers and you're asking the teachers to have flyers in their windows advocating such a thing, you are pushing racism.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so the teachers, several of the teachers, are creating that environment where other teachers would feel that way, or even a group of students may end up feeling that way. Of course. So, is there an environment where you're made to feel guilt for being white?
Well, I believe strongly that's being pushed. Me personally, I don't feel guilty. I don't think I have any reason to feel guilty. But I believe that is the agenda that is being pushed upon those. It's
the environment they're creating.
No doubt. So even though there's not a critical race theory textbook, even though there's not a chapter, that they're going to think that critical race theory is not being pushed would be the same blindness and deception of a family who says that Temecula Valley has high test scores and low suspensions because they're rather intelligent and they behave well. It'd be the same deception.
Yeah. So let me ask you. So you've got the unions. They're obviously corrupt. Let's talk about the school boards.
Yeah.
What type of support have you received from the school boards?
Zero. The current Temecula Valley School Board right now is, I believe, a very progressive, a very unhealthy board, and they're very cutthroat. And those who do not agree with their vision, with their agenda, will be first on the chopping block to have those teachers removed. They are forming, as a coach would form a team. The current school board is forming a team of teachers that think like them, act like them, speak like them. And that's dangerous if you don't agree with the school board, which I don't. And I don't think I'd be the only one. And the interesting thing is I would imagine that most families who own homes and live in Temecula also don't agree with the vision of the school board. But yet the school board is eliminate. I think they got rid of 10 teachers this year, which is rather high. They are forming a team of teachers that think like them, walk like them, speak like them, and act like them. And that's a big problem, because I don't believe the school board currently at Temecula Valley is a true an accurate reflection of what families would envision. So the school boards kind of drive the staff. The staff will drive the schools. The schools will determine the character and the mindset of the students. The students will grow up to be the future.
Right.
It's a crazy logic,
right,
and sequence.
You talked about reaching out to parents, some parents, receiving this call that their child was involved in something and they defend their child. My child shouldn't be in trouble.
Of course.
But then there's other parents who never receive a call. They never even know what's going on in their child's life.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talk about this environment in a government-ran school where they're trying to cut the parent out of their child's life. Is that something you saw? Is it something that you could point to any specific examples?
Yeah, we're told we're not really given the green light to call parents and let them know maybe about a child who is named Jennifer who now wants to be called Jonathan. And if a student comes to me, like a student did last semester, and said, I no longer want to be called by this name. I no longer identify as this gender. I want to be called by this name, and this is my new gender. I think that 20 years ago when I started teaching, that a good teacher, and like myself included, would call the parent and say, hey, just let you know, your student came to me today saying that they don't want to be called Jennifer anymore. They want to be called Jonathan. And that the student identifies as a boy now. Are you aware of this? But now it's changed so much, where 2 years ago, the district had every teacher go through a new sexual harassment policy. This was 2 years ago. We had to take multiple classes and pass the classes, obviously, and be part of this new policy. And the new policy is that if a teacher does not call a student by their preferred name and gender identity, that we could be personally sued for sexual harassment. That's what it's called, sexual harassment. That if I don't agree with this student and the fact that the student now is identifying themselves as a different gender with a different name, and I don't agree with that, and I don't call them by their new name and gender, that I can be held criminally responsible, lose my job, lose my credential. Talking to the parents, it's almost in the school district's mind a violation because you are not allowing the student to express themselves. It's just a completely backwards thinking.
So this was actual school district policy. This is
Yes.
something the school board had to vote on, implemented into policy, placed into the district meeting minutes, and now they disseminate this to all the different schools saying, this is our policy. We're educating you in this. You have to sign and agree and comply or you're in trouble.
Criminally. You can be held criminally responsible. This was 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years at the most. This was a new sexual harassment policy. We had a staff meeting, and then after the staff meeting, we all had to log on to the website that went through the new program policy rules, and you had to watch videos, and you had to take a quiz at the end and pass the quiz, and it was required.
So this is Temecula School District policy. You have to keep things from parents. You are not allowed to advise parents as what's going on.
Well, at least calling a student by their preferred identity, which to me, you're only advocating for them to make these decisions and without having to have a discussion first. Why a student can just go to a teacher and say, this is no longer my gender, this is no longer my name. Shouldn't we have a discussion with the parents? Shouldn't we sit down with a counselor and have a conversation about what this child is doing? No, we're honestly letting the children just run amok. We really are. The students are just doing whatever they want. They dress however they want, they act however they want, they drink whatever they want, they smoke whatever they want, they wear whatever they want. And I think the teachers and admin are just doing a song and dance. Everything's fine. Our school's good. Look at our school. Look at our scores. We got great scores. Look at the numbers. Don't look over here. Walk the campus. I believe parents are allowed to walk the campus. I strongly encourage that. I strongly encourage the parents to walk the campus with the child. They're not. The parents are allowed to walk the campus. I've encouraged that to some of the parents when I was overseeing behavior. I said, why don't you come to school one day and walk with your child through the classes and see how he's behaving? For a parent to send their child to a public high school, even as nice sounding, at least, as Temecula Valley High School, I think that a lot would be revealed if they were to walk the campus. Spend a day. Watch what your children are seeing. Watch what they're listening to. Watch how people are behaving. Is this really the environment you want your children in 5 days a week, 7 hours a day.
So your advice to walk the campus is not just so that way they're aware, but so that way their minds would be open to the fact that they shouldn't even have their kids on the campus. Is that what you're saying? What would be your advice to parents who are hearing this right now, who have kids in the public school system, believing that this is an environment of education where they're learning the essential things to go out and lead a productive life? What would you tell parents?
Yeah.
Is your advice keep them in the public school?
Well, I'd say my advice would be determined on the parents' desires. If the parents desire for their child to be progressive and liberal in politics and in behaviors, and that they're okay with homosexuality and with profanity and immodesty and drug use, and that's okay to the parent, then I think that they wouldn't have any problem with their children going to a public high school, such as a nice one, so people think, as Temecula Valley High School. However, if that does bother a parent, if they want their parent not to be, if they want their child not to become numb to these behaviors and these drugs, that I think they'd be up to a huge challenge if their desires to have them be conservative and their desires are to have them maybe walk as a Christian and to be a bright light, that there's going to be a ton of work that's going to have to be done from the parent side to go over on a daily basis what their child saw or experienced in school. And there's going to be a ton of hours, I think, that would be required after school, almost deprogramming and communicating with their child what they saw and why, or what they heard from a teacher, from an adult, from another child, and to go over how to think more conservatively or more biblically. So I just think it would be very difficult. I don't see it being advantageous to a parent's desires if they really want them to be walking in a conservative Christian environment, because that's not the atmosphere that the Christian or the child's going to be in. It's just going to take a lot of work on the parent's side afterwards. It's almost a conflict of interest, to really have their child go there if that's not what they want them to be like. If they don't want them to think like that, why would you want them to be there all day long and around others who think like that? I know some Christian parents that say, well, it's like a missionary. My students are going to be a bright light. Well, I'm a missionary too. I do mission work in East Africa. I go to Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda. But that takes years to get ready to be a missionary and to know what you're doing and to be a bright light and to be willing to stand up against darkness and to be willing to suffer and be persecuted. I've been threatened to go to jail when in East Africa. I was arrested and told that I was disturbing the peace in a Muslim neighborhood because I was evangelizing in a Muslim neighborhood. I was bringing peace. But they said I was disturbing the peace, so I almost went to jail. But I understood there's going to be a consequence for preaching truth and being a light in a dark place who likes lies. So if your child's ready to be mocked and made fun of and persecuted and suffer, and
that's just ready but willing.
And willing,
yeah. Right.
I just think parents got to really step back and think about what is your desire, what is your vision, what is your calling, especially as a Christian parent. If you're called to raise your children to know Jesus and to walk in a Christian way, is this really helping?
So what I'm hearing from you is your advice would be just don't have your kids in there.
Not now.
Yeah.
Not now. 20 years ago was very different. Yeah. I was having Bible studies in my classroom. I still try. I mean, I work with Monty Sharp and Student Venture, and we had Bible studies in my classroom. And I used to have time after class where I would disciple students who were interested in Christianity, and I talked to them after class. But that was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And things have changed. So right now, I don't think it's a very wise decision at the moment.
Let me ask you this. What about for the Christian or even just conservative teachers? What would your message be to them?
We need to do a much better job of standing up for what is right and to call out things that are not right. And even in the education code, and I forget in particular where it is, but it says something to the fact that a teacher is mandated to make sure that the student is walking in with a moral compass, so to speak. But that's so subjective. What is a moral compass nowadays? So to the Christian teacher, we're called to be a light. And we can't just shrug our shoulders and say, well, it is what it is, and the world, is going in the wrong direction. But we're called to stop that. We're called to have it go in the right direction. Jesus told us in Matthew 6 that thy kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. So we're called to be soldiers. We're called to be warriors. We're called to be a watchman. You and I talked about Ezekiel 3 and Ezekiel 33 and how blood will be upon our hands. How can you look at a child and just let them go with however their flesh and desires and lust is going to let them go? So we need to take a stand. And yeah, that might cause us to lose our job, and so be it. But not saying anything, I think, is exactly what the progressive movement wants us to do, not to mention the demonic realm, the darkness. They want the Christian teachers, to be quiet. And you're going to cause a stir. And I know you're going to cause a stir.
Yeah.
But that's what we're called to do.
So one final question. I know several people who are running for school board right now. Strong, Christian, conservative. What is your message to these candidates should they get elected? Now, I shouldn't even say I believe they're going to be elected, because I think parents are awake. Once they're elected, once they're sworn in, what's your message to them?
Well, I think that, as we had talked about prior, that these schools have become government run, right? And they shouldn't be, because there is such a thing as local control. And I think that as a school board candidate, and if they get elected to be on the school board, that they can turn the tide, that they can really influence the direction of the school, and that we can't just be focusing on strictly academics. The morality of kids is so south and so poor and so bad, but that's a big part of education. I mean, if you look at truly, I have a master's degree in educational curriculum development. I have a second master's degree in educational neuropsychology. I was getting my doctorate with Loma Linda and Harvard in the field of education. This is before I came to know Jesus. And education, I think, is a beautiful thing. And it's very comprehensive. If you look at Socrates and Aristotle and Plato, and what it means to truly educate someone, in the arts and communication, and to be able to defend their way of thinking. Education is beautiful. I don't believe we're educating kids at all. I don't know what is going on, but I don't think it's anything close to what the true thinkers envisioned to be what education is. And we can get back to what true education is if we really make it a priority and put some level of decency for morality back in the schools and hold people accountable, and to really reflect the community. Because I don't believe that the majority of the homeowners in Temecula agree with the current vision of the school board, and their kids are being indoctrinated, and their kids are being led in a direction that is not where the families want to go. And I think if the families are frustrated, but this is not a complete enigma. This can be changed.
Right.
It should be changed.
Yeah, I think I agree with you when you say that that most of the homeowners don't agree with them. I think what it is they don't know yet what actually is happening. True. Because they've been fed a lie. And I think it's important for people like yourself to step forward, to have the courage and the boldness to actually tell people this is the truth. Yeah. This is what's happening on these campuses. This is the agenda. This is the environment that your kids are in, and it's not good. Yeah. And once that's exposed, and once these homeowners find out that is truly the environment that these kids are in, I agree. They're not going to agree with this. And that is why the elections coming up this November are going to be key, because they know that this is what's going on now. This is all being exposed. The last few years, all of these things are being exposed. Right. And now we've got strong candidates for school board that say enough is enough. We're not going to let this continue. Yeah. Somebody has to protect these children. Somebody has to protect our community, and I believe they're going to get elected. And I agree. I think they're going to be somebody who can help put us back in the right direction. Yeah. And so I'm excited about that. And again, I appreciate you, appreciate your ministry. How can people connect with you?
Well, our ministry is called Hands and Feet Outreach, and we were in Temecula for a long time. But now we are in Lake Elsinore, specifically Lakeland Village. And the church, is that what you're leaning?
Yeah, just if people want to connect with you or want to support your ministry or whatever.
So we have a church property in what's called Lakeland Village, and we moved there specifically because it's high crime, high drug use, And we want to kind of go where the darkness is to be the brightest light we can try and be. So from my understanding of church, it's more than just a building to meet at on Sunday. It's a body of Christ where we all work together. And even church itself, I think, is a little more comprehensive than just Sunday service and even Wednesday service. So at our church, we have cottages, and homeless can live in the cottages. Women and children specifically are what we have a component on the property where women and children can stay if they'd like to, if they want to be discipled and come out of what they're going through. We also do work with foster care, and we have foster care kids on campus as well. We also do low-income childcare, so that when the parents are away, that the child can be in an environment that is Christ-centered. Unlike what we're talking about, where the parents are away at work trying to make ends meet, and because both parents are away, the kids are going to school. But I believe the devil has swooped in and is indoctrinating the kids. So if we can get them at a younger age, and childcare can be very pricey. So we have a very low-income childcare for the community. And we also obviously have service on Wednesdays and Sundays, and we do a lot of outreaches. We're called Hands and Feet for a purpose. We try and really do work in the community and to turn the tables. That's what we're called to do. I don't think Christianity is a spectator sport. We're supposed to be out there being a light and being warriors and being soldiers. So what's your website address? It's just www.handsandfeetoutreach.com.
All right.
Very simple.
Handsandfeetoutreach.com. So excited that you're here. I'm grateful that you have the courage and boldness to do this. I wish God's blessing upon your ministry.
Thank you.
And I pray that much fruit comes from you giving this testimony of your experience. So thank you.
Amen. I hope some families see, and I really do encourage them to walk the campus. If you send your kids somewhere for high days a week, 7 hours a day, walk with them.
Right.
See what it's like.
Right. Amen. Well, I want to thank you all for tuning in to Our Watch tonight. I know this is a lot of information to take in. I think it's important that we are educated into what the reality is, and I think this is an eye-opener for many people. I pray that you share this out with your friends, your family, your neighbors. Let them know what's going on. We have a big election coming up in November. We got awesome candidates. That I've endorsed them. We've got the Inland Empire Family PAC that is raising campaign funds to help them get elected, and the California Teachers Association hates us. They hate what we're doing. They're having their seminars about us, telling people that they've got to stop us. I can guarantee you this, California Teachers Association, I know you're tuning in. You've got a big fight on your hands. We're not winning for victory. We're running from because we have victory. We are in Christ. You got a big fight on your hands, and you are going to lose.